So why do Americans fixate on identity or on association with race or political group or schools or teams? Well, Toqueville explains that. And what he says was true then is true now. And then I want to contrast it with Switzerland, which, though it is a democracy, it is quite different. In democracies where citizens never differ much from one another and naturally find themselves so close that at each instant all can come to be intermingled in a common mass, a multitude of artificial and arbitrary classifications are created. It's a very important phrase. With the aid of which each seeks to set himself apart out of fear of being carried away into the crowd despite himself. It can never fail to be so, for one can change human institutions, but not man. Whatever may be the general effort of a society to render citizens equal and alike, the particular pride of individuals will always seek to escape the common level and wish to form an inequality somewhere from which it profits. Such a small paragraph in this big book, but it's such a critical one to focus on because in America we have this insane fixation on things like race and now gender or sexuality. I remember that when I first came to the United States in 1999, I met someone who is one of my closest friends now, and he identified as Asian, and I laughed at him and I said, "You're not Asian. I'm Asian. There's nothing about your culture that is Asian. You grew up in Kansas City. I grew up in Asia. I have the mannerisms. I eat in the way that Southeast Asians eat. You have none of that. You have none of that." And even his own parents, who are Chinese, they said to him, "Magdalena is much more Asian than you are." But he, having been raised in this idea that it's just skin tone, said, "I'm Asian." I said, "But you have nothing to do with that. Culture should be whether you're Asian or European or North American or South American. It's not race, because you have nothing to do with race." So it took me decades to understand why Americans fixate on this. I also was horrified to learn that there was Black History Month. Don't worry, don't panic. I understand the history of slavery in America. Much more complicated if you look at the whole history of slavery around the world, but I digress. But I still thought it was horrible that we were identifying people based on race. It seemed rather strange to try to set certain Americans apart when we're all just Americans. But this explains it to me. And that seems quite sensible to talk about race when you compare it to sexuality and gender. I mean, sexuality and gender, why does that have to be an outside identifier? Why is that such an issue for us in America? Well, I guess it is because when everything is so equal and alike, the individual wants to identify himself as a minority, as something special. So I think Americans just need to be cognizant of this. And why is this not the case in Switzerland? Why are Swiss not as fixated on identity? Well, because even though we are a democracy, we're not pretending like everything is equal and alike. We are affiliated with this specific community, or maybe the Swiss still carry this division between Catholics and Protestants a bit, but you have these old identifiers that linger in Switzerland, but it's not just labels. Because labels are such a superficial way for us to set ourselves apart. The best way to set ourselves apart is actually to contribute to a certain group that we belong to, whether it is our family or our community or an organization that truly serves others, where something is demanded of us and where we have a right to demand something back. And this Switzerland still has, and I hope that Switzerland understands what this means. Because to do away with this mutual accountability is to render all things equal and alike. And guess what happens then? As he says here, you cannot change man. Whatever may be the general effort of a society to render citizens equal and alike, the particular pride of individuals will wish to form an inequality somewhere. So dear Americans, please, if you need to associate yourself with something, associate yourself with something that you have truly chosen, not something like race that you had nothing to do with. Don't judge anyone else based on such arbitrary things, but find an identity by serving others, by holding yourselves mutually accountable. And in doing so, you will preserve democracy rather than weakening it.